Welcome to the podcast about lighting matters. Our unflinching conversations uncover the nuances and complexities which shape the craft of lighting design.
We explore the pivotal whys behind a lighting designer's choices and find honest answers to your most challenging lighting questions because lighting matters.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Lighting Matters podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Avraham Moore with More Lights in Chicago, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Lisa Reed with Reed Burkett Lighting Design, and I am really excited about our guest today. My good friend Paul Beale is. I have a very distinct memory of the first time I met him. He stood up and said something to a room of people that I would have never said, and so one of our descriptions of our podcast is that it's unflinching, and he was the first person who came to mind as someone who's willing to talk about any topic without flinching. So. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a lighting designer.
So my mind's racing now, Lisa. I can't remember what I said.
What did I say? I'll tell you later.
Dare I ask? Maybe we'll come back to that. But yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a lighting designer with 18 degrees. I am located in London. So I've been here for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I spent, I think, 16 years in Australia, in Melbourne. Had a wonderful time there where I started Electrolyte, which is still going very successfully today. Some people will probably say more successfully than when I was running it, but anyway, we'll not go there either. But yeah, it's been about 10 years now.
I don't want to get distracted by this topic, but you stood up in a group of lighting business owners and said that you thought timesheets were rubbish. So we'll talk about that sometime.
Such a bore.
I know, right?
Although I will say, since then, I think I started to do a bit of, well, everyone else seems to do timesheets. Maybe there is something in that. And I've started doing them, but I'm about 4 weeks behind on my own ones. As we speak.
Yes, yeah, always. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I always struggle with them. But yeah, we've been intrigued by some of the work that you've been doing around reusing or LEDs at the end of their life, and I know you have a lot more education on that topic than I do. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
I don't know if it's a thing in America, but it's certainly a thing here. I'll just rewind a little bit because we are very fortunate that in central London, where our studio is located, in central London, there's a load of business headquarters, so office after office after office. So there's a huge market for commercial property. And we've done loads of this type of work where we'll go in, we'll work with a tenant that we'll be doing as part of a team designing the fit out. And it's often in buildings that are brand new buildings. So the developer will build a high-rise building, and in order to market that building, they will fit it out with raised floors, air conditioning, false ceilings, and a lighting system that's over here is referred to as Cat A. I don't know whether that kind of lexicon is used in the States, but Cat A lights are typically quite utilitarian lights, and they're just there to light the space so that the space can be marketed, and then a tenant will go in and do a beautiful scheme, and that's normally when we come in, and so we will inherit this space. And it's got hundreds of these panel lights typically. And what happens to these lights is that they end up going into landfill. They can't be reused. No one wants a second-hand light, do they? And what about the warranty? And so these fittings just end up getting discarded. And it's and this is not just me. There's lots of people in the lighting industry and the wider design industry in the UK that are just really cross about that, and to think there has to be a better way to do it. And so that's the kind of context of this. It's something that I've observed over several years now. And fast forward to last year, we are doing a project out in Cambridge, and it's so Cambridge, obviously, it's got the famous university, and associated with the university, there's a lot of life sciences, startup companies that might start with half a dozen people, and then they can just turn massive overnight. And you get these business parks that are full of these buildings that are specifically designed for life sciences startups. And again, we were really lucky. We got one of these life sciences parks as one of our projects. And I went out to visit the site to look at the building, it's an existing building. And I walked in, and the guy who had the keys, he was showing me around, and I said, what's happening with these lights? Tell me the story of these lights. And because to me they looked brand new, and he said, they've been in there for 6 months. And what happened was the tenant that the tenant that was there, they just did a fit out, and then they got bought. So they got bought for like 40 billion or something like that. So they've moved to a really nice office. They don't want this old office anymore. And they certainly didn't want their 600 by 600 tridonic panel lights. So anyway, I went up the step ladder, I took one down, and there's not even a layer of dust on the back of the light. It's just like it's just been fitted. And I got talking to the gentleman that was doing the demolition, and I said, look, what's going to happen to these lights? And he just checked his paperwork. He goes, oh yeah, it's all part of the demolition contract. I said, well, what does that mean? Where do they go? It's a bit like kind of asking that sort of question when you're at a farm. If you're taking a toddler to a farm, what happened, Daddy? What happens to the little sheep? The little lamb. You don't want to know what happens to this light once it's taken down. It was one of those kind of conversations. And I said, well, can I have them? He says, well, yeah, I guess so. He says, are you sure? I says, yeah. I said, let's not throw them away. I'll take them. So I think it was 4 stories in 2 wings, and there was about 600 or 700 of these panel lights. So I took one down. I thought, oh yeah, it's not too big. Held it in my hand. I went back, and the guy said, look, if you want them, I'll take them down carefully, and I'll stack them up. I won't just, because normally they just cut them down and just throw them in a great big pile. But bless him, he stacked them all nicely, and he says, but we've got to be off site by Friday. So if you want them, you've got to come back on Wednesday and pick them up. So I hired a van and I drove to Cambridge in this big sort of transit van. And he said, I said, oh, how you going with the lights? He said, yeah, they're all over there. And I had a look at this enormous pile. So there's another pile over there, and another pile over there.
Way more than you thought.
I don't know whether you get transit vans, but it's this big sort of cargo van, and it was volumetrically full. I think I did 3 trips at the end of these lights. The van was loaded down. It was like that. And then I thought, I really haven't thought this through. Like, where am I going to put them? Because there's just so many more of them than I thought. I thought, I'll just put them in the corner in the studio. That'll be fine. It's like bigger than our entire studio. And so our landlord had another studio that was sort of just moved out of, and it'd been empty for a couple of months. So I said, look, I've got all these lights. So I've ended up having to hire another studio, double my rent, to accommodate these things. So that was the start of it, and then there's this. I came across this. As soon as you start doing something like this, and I mean, you tell the anecdote. It's a funny story. People, you get known as, you're the guy that takes the old lights, aren't you? So someone else said, we've got all these these LED fittings. They're headed for landfill. Do you want to save them? I said, yeah. So send me a photo. Anyway, I got another van, so I got another pile of these, and then I got about kilometre and a half of extrusion, say from this project up in Birmingham in the centre of England. And so this studio I've got is absolutely full of leads. Like, in fact, I've got even more. There was another one. There's this company, and I don't know whether this happens in the States, but over here, if you want to sell a light fitting to the sort of consumer market, you have to put labels on it to say how energy efficient it is. So it could be a B or a C or an A plus or an A or whatever. And these are, they're not the sort of fittings that we would normally specify, but they're perfectly fine. They're, just, okay sort of quality, decent sort of fittings. And I think last year they would have been categorised as an A energy rating, but then the government changed the criteria for that. So it's now a B, but in order for them to test and recertify and put a new sticker on these lights, it just, I spoke to the company owner and they said, it's just not worth our while to do that. So again, these are heading for landfill. These are still in their box. They've never come out of the box.
They're new.
They're brand new.
Oh.
And I said, how many have you got? And they sent me this spreadsheet. And I said, look, I'll just take them all. And so
now you got all these lights sitting in a warehouse,
but this one,
or sitting in this other studio.
Yeah. So I said this.
How are you getting them out? What are you doing with them?
Well, I'm going to send you another photo because this morning I put them into storage, and I thought, I'm going to put them into a big storage unit. So this is another space that I've had to hire, and it was again filled. The entire volume of this thing was filled. And my sons have just finished their finals, their examinations for school. I've roped them into working for me this week. So I said, I've got a couple of lights we need to move. So this morning...
A couple.
No, 2 complete vanfuls of these lights. So I can hardly get in my second studio now. But we've started a process of going through the part numbers, doing an inventory of everything that we've got, colour, temperature, wattage, lumen output, whether it's got a driver or not, what the spec of the driver is. But what's also happened over here is that the government has phased out fluorescent lighting. So you can't buy a fluoro anymore legally. Or you can buy one, but you can't sell one. That's the situation. And there's lots and lots of buildings that are full of old fluorescent lights and that don't have any money. So I'm here in central London. I'm seeing all this light, all of these lights go into landfill, and no one wants them. And then in the education sector, I mean, I was on the board of governors of our local school. It's full of fluorescents. They've got no money. So and they say, there's nothing we can do. And I just think, well, surely if we can get the lights from over here and put them into this setting, that's got to be worth doing. And so that's been a bit of a sort of dream to. And I haven't got rid of a single light yet, by the way. I've still got them all. I've gathered them all. I haven't sold a single one yet, or given. I don't even want to sell them. I'm just sort of giving them away. But it's it's a dream, and it's something that it should be easy, but it's not. Because as soon as you sell, if I'm selling a light, even if I give it away, I'm effectively selling a light at zero cost. What about the warranty? What about if the building burns down and it's the fault of the light? Well, that's your fault, And I haven't spoken to my insurer. If my insurer's watching, none of this happened. I just made this up. I'm dreading that phone call. You're what? You're an architectural lighting designer. Yeah. What does an architectural lighting designer do? We're going to have to go through all of that. That's going to be the preamble to the conversation. And then I've got all these old lights from a building site that I want to put back into service. It's just
there's got to be a way around that. Around that liability. And I know other people here in the States who are looking for that same sort of rescue and reshare, reuse, creating a website or some way of keeping these things from just trashing up the planet.
And even asking the manufacturers, right? Like, if you're a reputable manufacturer, look, you shipped this thing and it had a 5-year warranty and it was installed for 6 weeks. Okay, we're not asking you for a 5-year warranty. We're asking you to support the product. If it fails, help us get parts. And then I think the other piece of it too would be, I don't know how you guys are approaching in your new projects spares these days and, spare parts and this, that, and the other. Our approach is just buy spare fixtures, right? I don't want spare drivers. I don't want spare LED arrays. None of that makes sense to us anymore. It's really like, if there's 400 fixtures, buy 404. So that way you can parts the 4 to fix the 400 that are up in the ceiling. So I wonder if, by talking to the manufacturer and saying, look, like, we want your support. We're not asking you to extend the warranty. We're not asking you to even maintain the warranty, right? But for somebody who's getting stuff for free, right, because it's that school who just doesn't have the money, right? Or maybe they have to pay for transportation or something like that, right? But then also they need 400, they get 420, right? And they have that spare package, and you have a manufacturer that says, yeah, this is fine. Then, what else do you need? I mean, I think it's some legalese with an attorney.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. There's a way to minimize your liability, but what you're doing is so admirable. There's got to be a way of.
We're doing it since this phase out of the fluorescents. We are starting to get a lot of kind of LED upgrade kind of inquiries coming through, and I'm trying to advocate for, well, do you actually need to change your whole light fitting? Because the casing is fine, but the metal bit is fine. The diffuser, look at it, it's fine. We need to take out the fluorescent tube and the little tombstones maybe there, or leave them in, whatever. It needs a new driver. If we can, we did a project. We looked at a project for a school, and we ran 2 different strategies just for comparison. One was to have new light fittings with new controls, so daylight link, occupancy sensing. And on a parallel track, we looked at retaining all of the fittings that they've got, but refurbishing the internal. So take out the fluorescent tubes, put in an LED board, put in a Kasambi wireless driver, so there's no messing around with control wiring. And the capital cost was about 60% cheaper to retain the existing fittings. I know there's a little bit more labour involved, and in the end, it was really interesting because the client decided not to proceed with this. And I think the thing that was the perception of it was, well, we're spending all this money and we haven't got new lights. And I said, well, the bit that's important is new. It's better to have, and the LED components are like best in class. These are, very high color rendering, really good color quality, absolute top of the range in terms of energy efficiency and Kasambi control, daylight linked. And it's a school. So I was saying, like, these lights, because we're going to control them really well. Schools operate from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3:30. That's daytime. So
yes.
The sensor will know that it's bright enough. So if the sensor say, you meet the foot candles or the lux levels, these things are just going to dim down or switch off. So it's going to run off like fresh air, this thing. But the perception was, but we've still got our old lights. So that's
but it's just a box. It's just a back box,
right? And I mean, I think a lot of people have seen. So in the States, we call them ESCOs, right? Energy service companies that come in and do LED replacement tubes, and they shove them in 2x2s and 2x4s, and the end result looks horrid.
Yes.
And I will add that there is 99.9% of the time, and I feel comfortable as Avi Moore saying this, there is not an IALD lighting designer involved. It is purely we're going to sell you some stuff.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is a lighting designer coming in and finding a retrofit solution that is cost effective. And let's include labor. So it's still 40% cheaper. Let's add another 20, right? 40% cheaper than buying new. And you get all these other benefits and energy savings and everything else. It's one of the reasons, Paul, this podcast exists, because what isn't out there for that client is somebody saying, yeah, there are these people that do these terrible things and you may have seen them. And in some people's mind, they're not terrible. But I think to this lighting designer, they are terrible because it doesn't take into quality of light and dimming and all those other things. And yeah, why do you have to change a metal box? If you could produce better light and just retrofit some LEDs in, and you're getting the warranty from the LEDs. Now, we have the other fun problem in the States, UL, ETL, CSA, that makes some of that complicated, right? Like that box made by manufacturer X and shoving manufacturer's Y stuff into it. Manufacturer Y has to be listed to modify manufacturer X's product.
It just makes it too hard, though, doesn't it? It's like it puts it in the too hard basket, and you think, well, let's just put some new ones in, and like something's got to change, isn't it? Because I went to a really interesting talk at IALD last week. Some guy from Denmark, I can't remember his name, but he was saying, look, when we're talking about sustainability and we're getting ever more energy efficient, well, parallel with that, the generation of electricity is getting greener and greener. So yeah, within 10 years, it's highly likely that all the energy, all the electricity that we use on our lights is going to be green anyway. So it doesn't really matter how energy efficient they are. Because if it comes from a windmill or a great big PV farm, yeah, who cares? The thing that's not addressed as part of that thinking, though, is the embodied carbon that goes into manufacturing the fittings. And I've done a lot of reading around this subject, and it is directly related to the weight, to the mass. So if if the mass of the light fitting that you're putting in new is a couple of boards and an electronic driver, well, that weighs hardly anything compared to the metal work and the diffuser and everything else that makes up the bulk of the weight of a fitting. So I think we need to start thinking less about the actual running costs. I mean, I know that it's still an issue at the moment because there's a lot of still coal and gas-fired power plants. But in the future, when it is all green, it's going to be that embodied carbon that's going to be the important thing.
And hopefully we can focus on quality of light then, and not electricity.
Yeah, I don't know what your experience of this is, but over here we at the start of a project there'll be a sustainability consultant, and I know their heart's in the right place, and it's wonderful that projects have dedicated consultants for this. It's important stuff. I totally get it, but the kind of lumens per watt that needs to come out of the fittings, that they don't actually realise what they're asking for, and they say, it's got to, it just goes up and up. We get situations where it's practically impossible to achieve unless the LED chip is kind of poking out the bottom of the fitting, and it would just be absolutely horrendous. And no one cares what it looks like. Or that consultant doesn't care what it looks like, of course.
They don't.
No, exactly.
And I find it unfortunate that those systems don't talk about. So if we transition to like new construction, they don't talk about or give credit to things that are serviceable. So I've been on a few podcasts where people have talked a lot about lighting designers picking things that aren't serviceable, burying LEDs in concrete, and you can't get the light bulb out, right? You can't service it. But we talk a lot about products and how like I get my hand into that downlight to get the driver out, right? We've seen drivers installed on the backside of junction boxes that you would have to magically, you know, do some crazy thing to be able to get to the driver. Anyway, it was a longer conversation, but we have projects, I'm sure you both do too, that have been using LEDs for almost 10 years. And we've had a board fail, we've had a driver fail, but it's serviceable, right? You're not ripping open the ceilings. So your footprint, as you were talking about, Paul, while it's a new construction, right? So you have that footprint initially in the truck and the cardboard and everything associated with that. The long-term footprint, we're at 10 years. And we've changed maybe this one restaurant I keep thinking about, we've changed maybe 7 drivers and 2 LED arrays.
And what if that had been a situation where you had to replace the whole fixture? Then you're like throwing away the whole thing.
The restaurant opens at 5 p.m. and the chefs are in at 8 a.m. So you would have to madly cut open drywall, cut open the fixture, right? Now you have 2 subs, right? Drywall. Well, the electrician could cut the drywall, but they're going to do a really I should watch myself. The electrician's going to cut open the drywall, get the light fixture out, put the light fixture back in, maybe an hour. For us, then you have to reprogram the dolly system. So that becomes another contractor that's involved. But now you got to reinstall the drywall, and then you got to tape and mud it, and then you got to paint it. You got to do that all before anybody shows up into the restaurant, 5 p.m. dinner seating. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, so you're not even talking about just being green or sustainability. It's just practicality.
Practicality.
Just do the right thing.
But, I mean, think about the green part of that, though, right? Like all the drywall, all the mud, all the plastic to protect everything while you're doing that. The 4 different contractors we just talked about, driving to the site, parking someplace, potentially coming back again. And in the discovery of figuring this out, they were there, right? Like these are key things that I think we all practice in our design and think about that I think gets lost in the process of lighting design, maybe not done by lighting designers, but also just lighting in general, right? People not paying attention to these finer details.
But that's the other thing, just on the sustainability sort of code compliance stuff. A lot of it is just installed lumens per watt. And it's, well, actually, if you then think about how it's controlled, what about if we invest a little bit more energy in the system, so it's going to look amazing? Quality of light, Lisa, as you brought up, so important. And so we invest a little bit of extra watts per meter squared to make it really function well and be beautiful. But then we control it so that it's only on when it's needed. Yeah, the end result is the same, but that's harder to calculate. So the sustainability consultants, they hate that as a solution, because they say, oh, but we don't know how it's going to be operated day to day. But yeah, I think really good lighting design with really good controls is the answer, rather than just trying to make it like as like a skinny latte on with skim milk. It's just never good, is it?
But yeah, the hours of operation is a key component in the energy consumption. So we can't just ignore that. And then, like you said, getting better color and better glare control, just healthier, happier people.
Yeah, we have to get beyond the connected watts per square foot and get to the used watts per square foot. right? And I think it's fair to have a conversation on, like, for more like, we use a lot of dolly controls, and we don't hook it up to relays. So when all the lights are off, they are consuming, I believe, the spec, and people are going to yell at me if I'm wrong, but I don't know off the top of my head. Let's just call it a watt, right, to keep the electronics on. So we have a vampire load per driver of a watt compared to a 0 to 10 volt system or a ELV system. Okay, fine. But now I I can't think of a project where we're running the lights at full ever, right? Maybe in 5-10 years as the LED degrades. That's one of the beautiful things about using lighting control, right? You get extra life and you can slowly ramp it up.
In theory.
But
Have you ever done that?
in theory.
I know you can do that.
No.
No, exactly. And I've never met anyone that has done it.
No. No, I mean,
5 or 10 years' time,
I will say
you've forgotten about it.
that 10-year-old restaurant, we've actually had we have gone back in and adjust levels because the restaurateur is obsessed with lighting. But quite honestly, he has full control with an iPad to modify. So I would assume that if he walks in and he doesn't like something, he's changing it himself than calling us. But it's there and it's available. And we haven't gotten the phone call to relight the restaurant, right? It's really just been, how can you help us get drivers and circuit boards, because things have been failing. I mean, it's 10 years old.
It's really great, though, to have a client with that kind of longevity who cares that much about lighting. It's kind of rare. It's like working on your own project or something, working with yourself, right? Like, I would go in 10 years later and adjust the light levels up for myself if I noticed. But how many of our clients?
Yeah, it triggers another challenge, which is service, right? How do all of these things get serviced? And the experience we've had is that the service companies don't really understand how to service this new technology. They are very much in the camp of, oh, we just have to replace everything.
Oh, it sounds like maybe you're doing more of this than I am. I wish that we could get more involved in maintaining our projects and going back and making sure that things are still performing, because the clients don't always recognize that the LED is degrading or that the color is shifting. And that's something I wish that we could get contracts to do, is just do an annual review for a client. But have you done that?
It's an interesting idea. What does it cost you? $1,000 to go out to a site 4.5 years after it was done, right before the warranty runs out, and then
it saves them how much in replacement product?
And you just gained a long-term client, a customer who says, wow, these guys do more than just that. I don't think the electrical contractors are going to do that. I think the general contractors have moved on 5 minutes after the light fixtures were installed. But we all have these projects on our websites, and then we also have the manufacturers we continue to work with. So, I think it's interesting. I actually was in a space here in Chicago, and I knew who the lighting designer was. And I walked into it and I was like, half of the fixtures are out, and this is 18 months old. And I called the lighting designer and I said, hey, whose product did you use? And what's going on here? And just that was valuable to me as a business, right? Like, never going to use that manufacturer ever. But also to understand this is a big project, a big, government space. Wow, we really have to make sure that we meet the maintenance folks. So when we notice something like this, we can call and say, hey, how do we help you? Because our name is on this and we want it to look awesome for 20 years, because you're not going to touch it again in 20 years. Like, can we help you? What can we do? I don't know. It's just kind of this. this thing that I've kind of taken on, because in the theater world, you do a show, it goes up, it comes down, it disappears, it's gone. But in our world, these things last a long time, and I don't know. It's just been an idea that we've tried to play with, and
Yeah, us too. And it's just because we care. We care about how it looks for the long term. We care about sustainability. There's so many things at play in keeping a lighting design working and looking good for the duration of its life.
Yeah, and I think a lot of contractors, they just assume that the way it's required to be done on this project is the way that they did the previous project. So we will often, at the start of a project, just when the contractor's been engaged, go there with our documentation and say, with respect, this is how it needs to work. This detail, what this is showing, these are the important things here. We don't want you to get this wrong. We don't want to have an argument at the end of the project and for us to be on one side of the table and say, oh, but it says on our detail, you should have followed that. Look, there's a little sort of minute, drawing that would show this particular aspect of an installation detail. I'd rather say up front and say, look, this is really important, and if you get it wrong, we're going to need to redo it. So let's just understand it and not get it wrong, so that at the end of the project, and often the thing that I love is when you get contractors and they're just on board and they get it and they say, oh yeah, this is going to be really special actually. And as soon as you get them invested, like, you're going to get a great project if you get them excited. And conversely, if you get a contractor, it doesn't matter how good your design is or how good your documentation. If you've got a bad contractor, you've got almost no chance of getting it to look any good. So, when they're bidding the project and they say, "Oh, the one that won the project was half the price of all the others that tendered it," you just think, "Oh no, it's going to be a nightmare."
I'm curious how often you both get the opportunity to interview or discuss or review electrical contractor bids before your partner, the electrician, is selected.
Lisa?
So rare. Maybe once, twice.
We're the same way. It's really surprising, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And they're the people that have to execute something that the client paid for, and hopefully find some sustainable efficiencies, right? Oh, we can run these wires, have less conduit. What if we put the electrical panel here, right? But the partner, they're ultimately our construction partner. And yeah, I would agree. We never get the opportunity to say, well, how are you going to approach this before they get hired on a job?
I don't know how it works there, but over here, what can sometimes happen on projects where it's particularly cost sensitive, the contractor will go in and they'll bid it really, really low, and they'll get the project, and there's virtually no margin in there. And the game is to then say, to value engineer the lighting and many other services as well. But the lighting is always seen, especially if there's a fancy lighting designer on board, because the perception is that you've got gold-plated switches and like all this sort of unnecessary sort of Liberace sort of chandeliers everywhere. And so they think, oh, there must be just loads of just superfluous wasted money in this, in the scheme. Of course, it's all full of waste if a specialist is designing it. I mean, what nonsense! Like, surely we know if you've got a specialist that designs it, that's got access to the knowledge of all of the ranges, so low, lower mid, upper mid, high. We know exactly where to pitch the design depending on the budget. So in the design process, we'll say, what's the cost plan? How much money have you got to spend? We will spend your money in accordance with that cost plan and get you the best possible scheme that you can afford, right? And if they've got a really low budget or really high budget or anything in between, doesn't matter where it's pitched, we will come up with the best scheme. And then the contractor will come on board and they'll say, oh yeah, well, you know what these fancy lighting designers are like. We can get you something. It's going to be exactly the same, probably better actually, and it will be half the price. Because look at this one. This one is exactly it's exactly the same as this one, isn't it? And that's exactly the same. And sometimes the client, they'll hold this light in their hand and say, God, yeah, they do look sort of pretty similar. You know, why is this guy wasted our money with these fancy German light fittings where this one looks exactly the same? Where's this one from? Oh, it's from China. That's fine. I know that there are some products from China, but a lot of these sort of no-name, copycat kind of products just do not perform as well. They don't last the distance. And by this time, Avi, as you suggest, the project's finished. Where's the contractor? Oh, come back. They've gone. Or even if it's like after the warranty period, it might be 12 months.
Right.
It's not very long for a light fitting to, if after 18 months this light starts to fail, and you've got thousands of them in the building, they'll say, well, who signed off on this? And they won't remember the pressure that they put you under to, force you to kind of agree to things. So, it's a difficult. We're often, as lighting designers, put in a really difficult position. I mean, I don't mind what the budget is. I could design to any budget. Just tell me the budget, and we'll design to it.
Right. Just tell me. Yes.
And if you've only got hard, of course, what happens is that the contractor will say, "Oh, but we can save you 20% on your lighting package." But what they're doing is giving you a 50% less quality and less cost, and they're trousering the remaining 30% because they've gone in with no margin on the project. Not all contractors, like the good ones, don't do it, but there's certainly ones out there.
I didn't know that happened in London. I thought that only happened in the US.
It's the Wild West.
The game is afoot here as well. Yeah. Well, and just to bring it back to our core subject for today is what's the sustainability in that, right? Like, okay, then it fails in 18 months, and now we got to get another one, and or let's talk about let's spend that just moment. Let's just spend that moment of getting something from Germany to Greater London versus something getting from China to London. I mean, that has to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, there are so many costs.
Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. And Paul, I think there's a lot of subject matter here that we can continue on, and I definitely want to do that. But I think at this point we should, stop there and continue on another time. I do want to make sure that we thank our sponsor of this episode, which is Lighting Services Inc. LSI. They sponsored this podcast today. LSI is celebrating their 66th anniversary and is the premier U.S. manufacturer of track, accent, display, and exhibit lighting systems.
Yeah, I've heard they make excellent tracks and spots.
They really do. I have to say, my first introduction to them was being up on a lift with one of our museum clients, and they're like throwing these things down into the basket, when they're changing out from one exhibit to the next. And they really are built well.
I have been told that LSI does not recommend doing that.
No, of course not.
But every single one of our clients, including us, do it all the time, and it works just fine. And the paint still is on, which is pretty cool too.
LSI designs and manufactures premium quality architectural lighting fixtures. Their products are control agnostic, integrating control simplicity, and feature an industry-leading, this is important to today's discussion, 12-year warranty.
Wow. Sure.
We wrote this document, and I didn't realize LSI had this 12-year warranty. At the end of the 12 years, and if something fails, they will send shipping information to send the trackhead back, and they will repopulate the trackhead with drivers and new LEDs and send it back and give you a brand new warranty on the product.
Oh. That's amazing.
They've built their system to be as sustainable as possible long term. So you could potentially buy their system and run it. I got in trouble for using this one time, but I'll use it anyway. It's future proof. It really does become a future proof system.
Their reputation for creativity, innovative design, and leading technology, coupled with intelligent, personalized service, has made them the manufacturer of choice among the most discriminating specifiers in lighting. Visit Lighting Services Inc. at www.lightingservicesinc.com to learn more.
Perfect.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much for having me on, by the way. It's just an absolute honor. And I love speaking with Lisa anytime. So, lovely to meet you, Avi. And I'm sure our paths will cross at some conference or other. So,
yeah, for sure. I know it's always fun talking with you, Paul. Thanks for saying crazy things like, timesheets are rubbish.
In fact, it's almost 5:00 on a Friday afternoon. Maybe you've just inspired me. I'll go and do my timesheet before I open the beer.
There you go. This is your reminder.
Okay. All right. Cheers, guys.
Lighting matters. As we wrap up, we want to reiterate how much we value your time, and we hope you found it as much fun to listen to as we had creating it. Remember to like it and share this content with your friends and colleagues.
The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors. Our content has general application, but we recommend obtaining personalized guidance from a professional IALD lighting designer, such as RBLD or More Lights, for your next endeavor.